What's up, y'all? This is I'm So Beastly, episode 19, and I am Mr. Richard. Uh, this episode, it's mainly, I wanted to hop on here and mainly just talk about what's to come with I'm So Beastly, as well as a couple things that have happened. Really, mainly just one thing that's happened. Um, So I have consolidated my trivia podcast from Trivia Blam by Professor Blam, and now I have made it I'm So Beastly Trivia by Mr. Richard, me, of course. Um, and I just did that to consolidate it, make it under one brand, make it easy to find, and make it easier for me, really, to keep everything kind of under one umbrella. Since I do have my books by Mr. Richard, I have my podcast, this podcast, I'm So Beastly by Mr. Richard. I figured it'd just make the most sense to have my trivia podcast also be by Mr. Richard. And since this is already I'm So Beastly, I just made it I'm So Beastly Trivia, and it streamlines everything. So moving forward, everything's just connected. Um, and I think it's perfect timing because now we're about to go into a new year, a new calendar year. And it just works out. It works out nicely, and so it's going to be smooth sailing from here on out. So if you do want to check that out, I will actually put the link to that trivia podcast in this description, so you can go check that out. Uh, also, of course, I just want to mention I do have my book links down there. Both the books I've written, they are fictional, but they also have um, some wisdom in them, um, some metaphysics, esotericism, um, some about the self-growth, self-improvement, self-confidence, that type of thing. So they are fictional books, yes, but they have some very nonfiction meaning inside them, and I think it's an enjoyable way to get a deeper understanding of certain aspects. Granted, I'm biased, but hey, check them out. Don't check them out. Totally up to you. Um, and of course, my email is down below. So if you want to contact me for any reason, I've added that. Um, so yeah, uh, let's just get into it. So I am currently reading multiple books, but um, I'm reading The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. I've taken a step break from that because it's a little dense. It's very intriguing, but it's a little dense. So I wanted to take a step back. Um, and so I've been kind of floating between two books, biography about Harry Houdini, which is what we're going to talk about today because he's a fascinating character. I have not finished it. I'm about a third of the way finished. But it's highly intriguing. And I'm also the other book I'm back and forth with Harry Houdini is Behold a Pale Horse by William Cooper. And if you don't know, William Cooper is at the time of this book, which came out in 1991, I believe, um, was one of the world's foremost experts on UFOs, as well as a naval intelligence officer. So he does have credentials. And that book has a lot of declassified information, top secret information, and exposés in it. Highly interesting. It is nonfiction. Harry Houdini biography. It's a biography, so it's nonfiction. And that's the direction that I've gone. It's so difficult now to read nonfiction books. They just don't draw me in. All right, and they can draw me in if I find the right one, but the majority of nonfiction books that I've found are just too formulaic, and they just don't. It's like the author writes to sell the books instead of writing what they want to say. And that's not every author, but that is a vast majority of authors, especially the ones that are traditionally published. Nothing against them, not to say the writing is bad, but it just doesn't draw me in, right? Everybody has their audience, and I'm just not part of their audience. So I've transitioned mostly into nonfiction books. Now I do write fiction as well, like I said, but it's deeply connected in nonfiction. Um, I am currently penning a nonfiction book as well, based on my experiences and how I see things. It's kind of connected to this podcast. It will be entitled "I'm So Beastly," to connect it to this, but the concepts in there are lived experiences and just how I've seen things. And it's one of those things. Take it as you will. If you like it, great. If not, you know, not everything is for everyone. And I know my writing is not for everyone. My mind is not for everyone. But that's just the way it is. No worries. Not gonna hurt my feelings if you don't like it or don't read it, or it's not gonna hurt my feelings if you don't like this podcast. But if you do, heck yeah, let's ride together. But let's get into Harry Houdini. Um, so Harry Houdini was not born Harry Houdini. He was born Eric Weiss, and he is, uh, I believe, it's Polish or Hungarian. I'm not sure. That was in the beginning of the book, and it's taken me a while to read it. I've gone in spurts. But he's an immigrant that came over to the United States. His dad took a job as a rabbi, even though he wasn't really Jewish, but he needed a job, so he took it. Um, in, I believe, a Maryland town, somewhere in the Northeast. And yeah, I'm not great at small details, right? I'm a big picture guy, so that's like small details. They kind of matter, they kind of don't, but it's a big picture thing. So we're just gonna rock with it. Um, and so he did that, and he left home at the age of 12. Right? He's been on his own since he was 12 years old, and a lot of that started because his dad took him to a magic show when he was young, and he loved it and just started learning different aspects. And so he hits the road when he's 12 years old and starts learning different tricks, and ends up staying in the house with this woman, this family, and that family basically becomes his own throughout his travels, and he still goes back to them, hither and thither. And so that's an interesting aspect of him, that he kept essentially a second family, because I mean he was 12 years old on the road. Like that's incredibly difficult, super difficult to do. In certain ways parallels my book Winston Feathersby, because he's been on his own since he was 15. Um, he hitchhikes his way, around and whatnot, and connects with this other family. So parallels there, sure, but very different in other aspects. Um, so he starts to do shows all over the place. Obviously, not necessarily when he's 12, he does some stuff, but as he gets older, he starts to do shows in different theaters, real small town gigs. And he's doing the small stuff. He's doing like, I guess I wouldn't even call it small stuff, like a metamorphosis, they call it. So it's like he starts outside, his assistant starts in this box, and then they transition, and it's a whole thing. People love it. And he does some other tricks as well, but he's doing a ton of different shows in different theaters, all just constantly for relatively no money. And you know, it's a very tight schedule. Um, and I'm not going to go super in depth. I'll go in depth enough, but if you really want it, I will post the link to this book, this actual book that I've been reading, in the description, so you can go check it out. Yes, I'm going to post my Amazon affiliate link because, why not? Um, but of course, if that link takes you to the book and you want to buy it, you do not have to use it through there. You can research it again and find it and not give me any coinage for it. No worries. But I just have to tell you that I would make money from the link. Um, ooh, my hair's flowing in the AC. All right, so he does that, and then he ends up meeting um, some other people, but he's performing under different names, and he ends up seeing a show or hearing about this. My gosh, sorry, my hair is all over the place and little small strands are flowing. Ah, much better. Um, so he does a bunch of shows, but this one magician who become is world famous, and um, his last name is Houdin. Okay, and so Eric Weiss, he has been called Airy, which translated into Harry, right? So his Harry is not his actual name, it's Eric, and they called him Airy, and so he took on Harry. Now, Houdini came from the magician Houdin, and Harry didn't want to take over him, essentially. He wanted to um, pay him homage, pay him respect. And so he added an I to the end because adding an I to something means like this person or like this thing. And so Houdini means to be like Houdin, right? So Harry Houdini is the name that he came up with. Harry being from Eric and Houdini being because he wanted to be like Houdin. Um, and so we know Harry Houdini as this escape artist. And so it starts out, he obviously didn't start doing these crazy tasks, but he did work his way up from learning how to use handcuffs, get out of handcuffs, like basic ones, and then he would gradually work his way up. He did at one point, he got a job at a locksmith shop to basically learn the ins and outs of all the different handcuffs, the different types of locks to better his craft. And um, I guess I forgot to say, moving back, he did join a circus at one point. It was a traveling circus, and he was making like 25 bucks a day, or no, 25 bucks a week, I think, or a month or something time frame. So back in like 1890s, I mean, that was pretty decent pay, good enough. And it said for his act and other things that came up. So basically, he had to consistently do things that he wasn't necessarily prepared for, um, in the instance that that performer couldn't go or didn't want to do it or something came up. And so through this, he was able to actually gain all of these other different skills. For instance, like the contortionist, they taught him like he would spend time with them and learn how to contort his body in certain ways. Um, then you had like these different people like the strongmen or whatever. He learned from them how to use the leverage in the proper ways. So he learned these different skills from all these other circus characters and performers that he was performing, next to in all these stops along his way. So then now getting back to the fact, so he learned out how to, you know, pick all these locks at this locksmith place. He started to understand them all, and so he got really good at getting out of handcuffs. Um, so eventually he would, let me take a suck of the water. Mhm. Eventually he would go to police stations and say, "Hey, I would love to get out of your cuffs." And they'll say, "No, you can't get out of our cuffs." And so they'd put the cuffs on him, and in a couple minutes, most of the time in a couple minutes, he'd get out of them. And they're like, "Oh my gosh, that's incredible! That's so good!" And so of course the news would be there. They'd put out the story, and obviously it would be for promoting his shows. Um, so he does this, and we'll come back to this because it connects to everything. And I don't remember specific names, but the names may or may not be important, but the acts themselves are. So he continuously does this police station stop and marketing tactic throughout his entire career. Every stop he goes, every city he goes, every country he goes to. Um, and so he creates this name for himself through that, but it's not an easy route for his entire career. It takes a long time, many years for him to become Harry Houdini, to become this world-renowned success. Um, and for him, it honestly worked out because all of the newspapers were essentially local back then, right? There wasn't social media, there wasn't a wide broadcast, there was no TV stations, so he could go anywhere. And every time he went somewhere, the audience basically thought that they were seeing it for the first time. Provide like from when he went from one stop to then one city to the next. In the next city, they would always think it was something for the first time. And most of the time, it would be something that he had done, dozens of times before. So it wasn't anything necessarily spectacular for him, but for the audience, it was. And um, a lot of the reasoning, and this connects to today of how some people are more popular than others, even though they have a better skill, is he didn't have the type of hype man. He wasn't playing the crowd in the way that he should. And so some of the performers that were, in the vaudeville circuit with him, they had hype men. They knew how to play the crowd. They knew how to play the mind. They knew how to get people to believe something, so then they could wow them in the given way. And this is a skill. It's a definite skill. So this is a skill that Harry had to learn over time. And once he did, he got to the point where he could essentially trick the audience into thinking anything he wanted them to, and then to perform his acts. There are even times when he would basically make it seem like the act was harder to do than it actually was to impress the crowd more, right? And he had a silver tongue. He learned how to speak with everyone. Everyone loved him. He was a genuine guy. Um, and so he built his name through these aspects, right? Now, going back to the initial or one of the initial police station stops, um, one of the police chiefs was in charge of like the International Chief of Police Association, and it's still a thing today. But he was in charge of that, and he ended up like connecting him to one of the police chiefs at Scotland Yard, and they go over there, and basically this first police chief in charge of the International Chief of Police Association, I think that's the proper name, um, is basically connected to the Secret Service. And so the Secret Service is not necessarily what it is today, but it was the beginning of it. And so that's when they kind of got to, um, it was more, I guess back then, it was more of an information gathering service rather than a protection service. Um, and so they did actually learn a lot of skills like sleight of hand. So they did have a lot of magicians in the Secret Service because they knew these skills. And also they used them as spies because they were able to basically get close to anyone because of their fame. So the more fame they had, the easier it was to get them to different places because they were a known name, and they were essentially inconspicuous. They were basically invisible in terms of, being a spy because they're there for entertainment. They're not thinking that they're gathering information, so they wouldn't necessarily um, who they're spying on basically wouldn't necessarily not say things around them because what connections do they think that these magicians have? So they used these skills, they taught people these skills, and these magicians were spies. So Harry Houdini was basically used as a spy, and I haven't gotten into the nitty-gritty of this in the book yet, but it has introduced it, and he has used his connections with the police and different aspects. Um, different aspects of his routine to become this spy. But I'll get there, and I will do another episode on this. This is part one for that. I will have a part two as I continue the book. Um, and so he grows obviously into this massive megastar and ends up um, making in today's money thousands of dollars a week. He ends up buying a house in New York for $25,000 back then, which was like 2.5 million now, um, something like that. So he definitely over the years made a name for himself. Of course, we know this, but it took him a few years to break onto the scene as far as fame and fortune is concerned. Even though he was the best one, right? He was the best one, and people were um, always coming after him, saying, "Oh, you're not the handcuff king. You're faking this. I can get out of those." So then he would say, "Okay, well, I'll give you, $50 if you can get out of this set of handcuffs." And he would provide the set of handcuffs, and they would never be able to get out of them. And people would always give him, rigged handcuff sets or these ridiculous escape tasks, and he would always get out of them. Um, and so he proved himself to be the handcuff king, the escape king, um, over time, and this allowed him to basically move about the world as he pleased because he eventually became one of the most sought after entertainment acts in the world. Um, but it also goes to show you because some of the things he would do are incredibly physically demanding, right? But he knew that his mind had to be strong enough to even be able to do these physical acts, right? If he was weaker in the mind and didn't understand these things, a dumb man could not have done what Harry Houdini did in any capacity, right? He didn't allow his ego to get in the way of anything, right? His ego was always in check. He was always, a generous fella. He was always, yes, a silver tongue, but he was always courteous, always well spoken. Um, and so he allowed his mind to propel his career, even though people came to see his physical acts, right? So this man took what he was given. He learned everything at his disposal. He spoke numerous languages, right? This Harry Houdini is one of the most fascinating people to have ever walked this earth. And I mean, I've only touched the surface of it. This is a very, I highly recommend reading the book. Like I said, I've only gotten about a third of the way in. Um, so, and this is pretty much all I can tell you right now. Now, he did have his brother ended up going by the name Hardin, and they were like rivals at one point, fake rivals at one point. Um, but he would use him to like thwart these other people trying to bash his name, and he would go dressed up as different people to these acts. Houdini would actually, and Hardin, to basically do what people were trying to do to Houdini. He would go there and stump them and say, "You can't get out of this." Um, but he's done incredible feats. Like I mean, he's gotten out of jail cells that serial killers were in. He's gotten out of straitjackets. He's gotten out of being basically chained and jumping into a river without being able to move his hands and feet. Like he's done incredible acts, honestly, that the human body should not be able to do, that the mind should not be able to do. Granted, there were tricks that in ways that he did this. He didn't, it wasn't always just, by sheer dumb luck. The guy knew tactics, he knew how to do it. He stumped numerous government officials, numerous police chiefs. I mean, even at one point he was in Russia at the Kremlin, and he was in this travel container that was basically they're like, look, we take our prisoners from here to like Siberia or something, and good luck getting out of it. And of course, he was like, basically, it was in the winter, so if he were to go up there, he would have died because they didn't give him enough rations to make it, and it was a long trip, and it would have been cold, and he would have froze to death and died. But he found a way to get out of it. And of course, he was sneaky. He'd always come up with distractions to be able to, look at his entrapments. He would figure out ways to get out of them before he got in them. In a lot of cases, rather. So he was very intelligent. He knew how to play the game. He knew how to basically make people see what he wanted them to see. And of course, we know that is the game of the magician. But from what I've read, Harry Houdini is not famous by accident, right? This man deserves every piece of fame that he has ever gotten, every penny that he has ever earned. And I'm fascinated to see the next, two-thirds of the book because so far it has been incredibly intriguing. And I mean, that's basically it. He's such an interesting character. And I honestly, the reason I'm talking about this, I really had nothing else to talk about, but I needed to get on here. I wanted to get on here and do an episode, um, so there's not too much time between them. But this is episode 19, Harry Houdini Part 1. There will be a part 2 and a part 3. When they happen, I don't know. It all depends on my reading of the book, but I will post the description, the link of the book in the description. Okay. Um, and I have no clue what episode 20 is going to be about, but I do know that episode 21 is going to be about Atlantis. But I need to have a little bit more information to connect. I don't want to get anything wrong. I, I've seen the information, I've had the information. I just need to write it down so I'm not, you know, fumbling any words. That one I will be more prepared for. But, um, but yeah, so that'll be episode 21. 20, I have no idea. And then Harry Houdini part 2 and part 3 will come in the future based on when I read the book. And there might not be a part 3. I might finish the book and just rip a part 2. It just depends on how fast it takes me to read it. Um, but yeah, this has been part 1, episode 19 of I'm So Beastly. I'm Mr. Richard. Like, subscribe, share, follow, all that jazz, whatever. Um, it's been real. Thank you for listening. Thank you to all my thousands of listeners out there. I appreciate love you for coming to. My cat's going crazy. Thank you for coming to every episode of mine. It's you son of a butt. My cat is just it's just outrageous right now. All right, but yeah. Oh, he's going nuts. All right, yes. Sorry, but that's been it. So yeah, we'll all right, we'll catch you next time. Ta-ta, kittens.